Zach, Natalie, welcome. Today is going to be so much fun. So I am going to start off, I want to start off the conversation talking about spirituality. Now, you guys are, and I mean this in total honesty, you guys are one of the most, if not the most spirit-led couple I have ever met. And a lot of people, when they're really diving deep into the spirit, what they kind of have this balance, and this is what I've found in my life, is struggling with this balance of how spirit led do I want to go? How much do I not want to go? I don't really know how to word it, but you guys have lived out this balance in a way that I haven't seen anyone else do. Can you guys kind of explain what this looked like for you guys? How you guys adopted these priorities?
You want to take that?
Oh man.
Yeah, we dive in right in.
Question.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. Sure. I don't know that there was ever one moment of, hey, it's time to adopt this. I think that there's definitely been a sense of relationship building with God throughout both of our lives individually. I know for myself, that is so vast and so dynamic that in different seasons of my life, God has just called me to grow closer to him. And that's just a huge part of my relationship with him. And so us today, I mean, what you get to witness with us and anybody who gets to hang out with us and talk with us is really, that's just years of relationship building with God. And the, every single day that we spend with him, the closer we get to him, the more that we know him and recognize his voice and are able to just listen to what he's doing and where he is and follow him in that. And so it helps, it's helped shape who we are as people and how we do our business, how we steward every single bit of our lives, our finances, our relationships with other people.
Yeah.
None of it's disconnected. So
I feel like it's a lot of really small decisions that on a consistent basis have led to big change.
Absolutely.
Looking for God in small things, looking for the spirit moving in a friendship or a conversation or going to the grocery store. That small but consistent seeking has led to big impact. And that now over years, that consistent relationship has grown to a place where it's like when you first meet someone, when you like the friendship grows until all of a sudden people see you and that person as inseparable. Oh, those two are always together. And so now after years of consistently hanging out with God, it might have looked like texting at first, like, oh, hey, how's it going? And just like kind of building that relationship now after years of that consistent dialogue.
It's hard to talk about your life without that person because that's just
inseparable.
Yeah.
Right. So was there kind of like a point that brought you to this? Because like people aren't obviously born and spend their entire life from a baby, like fully connected all the time. Like that's their top priority. So was there like a point that like tripped you guys into this, or that looked like?
I think respectively, like we've both had a faith journey that has ebbed and flowed. For me, I was in a car accident that kind of put some priorities in order. I was walking out a really unhealthy life and then flipped my car in a winter storm. And walking away, I was so blessed to be able to just actually walk away from that accident. And that for me, kind of that second chance at life, I reevaluated what my priorities were and looked at, God's letting me have a second chance at life. So I started taking that spirit relationship a lot more serious and trying to really engage there versus how I was living prior to that. I think for me, that was one of the bigger events that kind of shaped how I would walk forward from there.
Right. And how about for you? Anything for you, Natalie? Like, was there a specific event or anything?
Not in the same way.
Mhm.
My relationship with God was a little different.
Mm.
But I've had multiple moments throughout my life that were very grounding. And if I can put it somewhat concisely, going through some really challenging seasons of depression and not feeling like there was any hope in life or anything worth living. Unlike most people in that season, I still believed in God, but didn't want him, if that makes sense. And I struggled through that season feeling like I did everything right, so why do I feel this way? And it was coming out of that season, I had multiple experiences towards the end of that season where God genuinely answered all of my prayers, all of my desires, in ways that I didn't realize I was asking for anything. And just seeing him show up in, like, I could go on into detail on this whole story, but for the sake of time and just to be fair, it was an extraordinary experience of just realizing that God was listening even when I didn't realize I was speaking. And that shifted something for me, to realize that there was somebody who cared so deeply that, what I saw coming out of that was not that, oh, God had left me in my depression, but he was holding me and waiting for me and was lining things up to show me how much he cared, not to get me to do anything for him or anything like that, but just because he cared so deeply for me. So that was a huge shift in my life.
Man, that's so, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I think a lot of people can connect with that. And that's so fascinating. You guys are describing this. It's very much like a relationship building process. Like I think, like Zach, you had said earlier, when you start off in a relationship, it's just texting, or it's I love that metaphor that clicked. And then as you go on, eventually it's like, oh yeah, you can't talk about one without talking about the other. That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I know both of you were raised in very faith-based families. That's right, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Do you think that played into this? Like helped it, hurt it? How do you feel like that played into this?
I think both.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
For me, I was raised as a pastor's kid. So I was constantly at a church, around a church, near a church, doing things related to the church.
Yeah.
And so for a really long time, I felt like my identity was somewhat like my actions reflected on my parents and the church. And so I was terrified to be who I really wanted to be, because I thought it would reflect poorly on those around me. And like what I thought I had to do to be a good Christian, to be a good faith person. And so it took me years to actually walk in a genuine relationship with myself, but also walking out my faith in a healthy way that wasn't dependent on those around me or what my actions could reflect onto other people.
That's a really hard mindset.
Process.
Yeah.
Growing up with that, it was tough, to say the least, that always thinking that who I am, I have to be a Christian because my parents are, or I have to walk in faith because that's what is expected of me. It didn't feel like I had room to really have the relationship for myself. So it was just semi-forced upon me, even if no one was trying to force me to be a Christian. it felt like this is just what I have to do.
Totally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. With that, what do you think are some of the positive things that have come from it? Because that makes a lot of sense. Super relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as far as like positives that came from that, I was consistently surrounded by people who had really good values and morals that they would help me navigate later in life. I've had a network and a community that was woven around me, people that have seen me grow up. Now I have a relationship with them, 10 years later, 15 years later, that as I'm navigating life, I can send that person a text or call them and say, hey, do you remember me? You like sowed some seeds in my life a decade ago. That's something currently we're walking in, that my old like youth pastors, people that saw me when I was 13, 14 years old,
right,
are now the pastors of the church that we are kind of attending. And so with them, like their kids are the same age that I was when I had met their parents. And so there's this network that has grown of like, oh, now we're seeing these people shape like the community around them. And so I think that's kind of like a backwards way of answering. Like, I feel like the people that were placed in my life because of their seeking faith as well in their own way. Those people have helped me navigate faith in previous seasons and are also still along that journey, still walking it out for themselves today, and respectively, like growing in the same way, kind of in tandem, same path, just different times. And so that's been really cool to see walked out over years.
Man, fantastic. Okay, thank you. I so appreciate that. You mentioned identity in the church, that was like a big thing to work through and kind of figure out. Was there anything, because that's something like in some of my previous podcasts I've talked about it. That's something like I've really struggled with, is when I was super involved in the church, running youth groups, running worship teams, all of that. That was where all of my identity was here, and I had to do this. And it was like, you're constantly on that battle, like you're talking about, like what can I do and can't do depending on how other people will perceive it, given my role here. And when I kind of stepped away from that a few years ago, that was, I think, one of the hardest parts, was losing so much of my identity that I had put in the church and put in my position in the church. So for you, what did that kind of journey look like?
I think in a similar fashion, like it took me walking away from where I was. And for a little bit of perspective, I'm a drummer. I started playing drums. Woo woo. I started playing drums in church when I was 7 years old. So like I have
had me beat, man.
I've got a few years of being involved in some sort of like, I'm a part of the like church that the visitor sees, that the community sees. Like ever since I was first grader, my identity has somewhat been rooted and founded on, I'm a part of this. So when I was somewhere between 18 and 20, I started kind of questioning, like, am I really rooted in this? Am I just playing drums? Is my heart really in this relationship? And I started kind of having some questions and trying to navigate that. And some of the people in my community at the time didn't respond well to my questioning. And so I chose to walk away, not from religion or Christianity or the church, but from where I was and the position I was in. I said, I don't think it's respectful for me to walk down this path while I'm walking on this path. I don't think it's a good example for me to set. So in me walking away, it allowed me to recognize the places where I was, like I had stumbling blocks. It allowed me to question what the greater purpose of it all is. Mm-hmm. Like at the very least, if I continue walking down this road, what am I going to get out of it? Like, am I just a good person? Mm-hmm. And is that okay? Like if I just stay a good person, if I'm not heaven focused or I'm not trying to like bring people to Jesus, like if I just keep walking down this road because I just think it makes me a good person, is that enough? And so in walking away, it allowed me to question a lot of the like teachings and previous beliefs that I had held, question whether or not I was doing it for the right reason. And then come back to it all with kind of clear eyes and say, you know, I think regardless of why I was brought into this faith journey, I want to keep asking questions. I want to keep going deeper and getting to the bottom of all of this for myself.
Come on. So Natalie, while he was talking, you had a couple like distinct smiles, like relatability smiles, I'm assuming, while he was talking about a few things. So do you want to jump in here? I feel like there's something you have.
Sure. Yes. He's touched on so many good things. So I'm trying to recall some of what was definitely relatable. That's so hard. We had very, very different experiences growing up in the church, but still so similar, you know, kind of personal journeys of finding our identity in that. And I didn't have pastoral parents. And so I didn't have somebody that I felt like my life reflected on. But I I definitely struggled because the church that I grew up in didn't talk at all about a relationship with God. And so my struggle where Zach kind of struggled identity wise with being associated with like pastoral parents and being involved in like, that's just what you do all the time. My church was built in a way, like their foundation was more social and more structure as far as just like religious habits and being morally good, all of which was a great foundation and helped me fall in love with God. But I knew in my heart that there was something more. And so my struggle was being in a church community that that kind of told me like, this is it. You go to church on Sundays and you're good. And I was like, there's more, help. How do I find this out? And when you're a 7-year-old asking those questions, most people kind of don't take you seriously in those environments. So that was where like I think where I relate the most is where like Zach needed to walk away in order to give himself space to find his own desire for it, his own understanding and his own relationship. Even though like there was so much beautiful spiritual building through his whole life, you know, for me, there was amazing foundation set in me, but I had to walk away from that community in order for me to discover there is more. I'm not wrong. There is a relationship. I didn't even know. I was like 14 years old and we had this like guest speaker at a different church who was talking about this relationship. Like it sounds so simple, but just even bringing up like, oh, you have a relationship with God, like you have with your parents and your sibling, and like describing it in such a human way, it blew my little mind. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And so I relate heavily on needing to like step away from what I knew wasn't bad, but I needed more. And I needed to find who I was, because clearly who I was wasn't satisfied with just socially going to church every week and never talking about God between Monday and Saturday. So
yeah,
Come on.
yeah, if that, I can like encompass my whole life in that little bit.
I feel like I can resonate in that way, that like being able to walk away from something and see it, you know, kind of bird's eye view and really get the perspective of the like individual parts. What is it about this whole thing that really like resonates in my core? Like in that same way, having you know, like you hear about like the church family or like Father God, stuff like that, and you're like, that's really interesting language, because I feel like there's some stuff there that I'm uncomfortable with. I don't like family. I don't like my dad. Like there's a lot of really just like hard to grasp stuff and language that is brought in. And so
it's not always, you're not always given a foundation for it. I mean, that was my biggest struggle with church, was growing up in a Christian family. You know, we went to church every week, but we'd go home, and I grew up with an abusive dad. And so hearing language like, you know, God, the loving Father, genuinely, I spent 20 years going, I don't know how to accept this love because it doesn't make sense to me. And so like where it was not helpful to have a family that was that kind of dynamic, it was more harmful in that way. What was helpful was being put in an environment that gave me the foundation and gave me the space to ask questions, and to start falling in love with God and knowing that there was more, like starting that hunger in me. So going back to your earlier question of you know, how was that helpful and harmful? You know, families are all so different, and trying to relate this perfect being to imperfect humans is so challenging without any understanding.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I feel like that plays into the identity question as well, that like, how does identity affect family? How does family affect identity? What does it look like with all of those relational dynamics, and questioning like, well, what's my place in this family? For me, I didn't understand my relationship with my family. And so trying to put, like, the church that I grew up in was very like family was their focus. And so I was like, but I don't get this. And so it took me actually like creating a relationship with my family to understand the dynamic of the church. It took me having a relationship with my parents that wasn't just like, well, I'm supposed to love you because you're my parents, to understand like, oh, God loves me like just because I exist, regardless of action. Like, oh, cool. So it doesn't like, not that it doesn't matter what I do with my life, but my identity isn't rooted in whether or not I strive to be a good person. Like, because I'm breathing air, like God's like, you're pretty rad.
Yeah. It's not rooted in like the outcomes and the things that you do. For me personally, like that's been the kicker. That's been the hard thing. In the podcast that's about to be released this week, we talked a lot about that, and it was, I couldn't put it into words, and I still can't, but the best thing I could say is very similar to what you just said. It's, I believe that I am a better person. I like who I am when I am following these, when my identity is in the fact that I am loved regardless of anything else, right? Regardless of my output. Then I like who I am 1,000 times better. And I think I am a better person when that's part of my identity. And I think within the sect of Christianity specifically, and a lot of religions, but Christianity specifically, in the relational aspect as opposed to the religion side, that is like one of the cornerstones. And I think that's where they nailed it. They got it. Like, it's unbelievably helpful in that regard.
Yeah. I saw something this week that it was a just kind of graphic illustration that said productivity does not equal worth. And I was just like, oh man, like, especially in today's hustle culture, like the amount that I get done in a day, the amount that I'm putting in hours, like this past week, almost every day I was pulling 12-hour days to like, and I love what I do, but at the same time, the amount that I get done in a day doesn't mean that I'm valued more.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't do anything that day, like my value as a human being, my value as like a spirit-filled person is not shifted whether or not I read the Bible more or whether or not I get enough done to like, you know, make myself feel good about how much I did. Like my identity in that is even like a huge thing to take in. And having grace for myself. I feel like what a lot of this kind of boils down to is that grace that isn't unpacked for, I don't know. Like, I don't think I have words to really pull that apart, but there's so much that having grace for yourself in your identity while you figure it out, while you pull it apart. Like, I feel like that's something that isn't navigated in the church, that like, hey, it's okay for you to question and it's okay that you don't know how to navigate this. I feel like that should be the welcome packet that everyone gets. That like, hey, if you haven't pulled this apart for yourself yet, if you're not some crazy theologian or philosopher, like have some grace for yourself, because this is new territory and it's okay for you to walk this out and question some stuff.
Come on.
Like that I feel like is one thing I wish I had known previously, like walking out faith, growing up as a Christian kid. I wish my parents would have said, it's okay. Have some grace for yourself as you unpack all this. It's cool if you learn all the Bible stories and the David and Goliaths of life, but have some grace when you question the bigger picture of how God fits into your daily life, because those people from the Bible, like they were humans too. They also had like normal everyday struggles. They didn't have Goliath every day, but like each one of them had to figure out how to have a relationship with their brothers and sisters. Each one of them had to unpack the normal everyday stuff. And there's grace in that. Like,
come on. Come on. Yeah. Freaking thank you. Freaking thank you. Could not agree more. Wow. You could definitely tell that there was a little bit of pastor's kid coming out there.
I'm like finding my soapbox real quick. Like,
exactly. Oh, it's I love that though. I think that's hugely important. I think when we can tap into what people call preaching, or when you're passionate and you can explain something, I think it's genuinely, I believe it's something coming through you as opposed to from you. It's something from outside of you that you're able to be there in the channel. Firm believer in that. So appreciate that. I know we didn't talking about this beforehand. We didn't bring this up, but if you guys are down, I would love for you guys. I feel like this would be a really good time to ask this. Can you guys kind of explain a little bit about how you met and your story? I think that if you guys are comfortable with that, I think this would be the next place to go.
The internet.
Because especially like going thus far, Station, like you guys are, like I said at the beginning, the most spirit-led couple I've ever met. And your story, I think it encapsulates not only does it show how spirit-led you are, but it encapsulates who you are. And it gives like a practical example of, hey, this is what it looks like when you trust God and you say, okay, I'm going to lean out into where it may not be comfortable or may not be like the norm, and I'm going to lean into this, and beautiful things can happen.
She tells it better than I do. So I'm going to let her handle.
Way to pass it off.
I think respectively, I could say we both, I'll give the like overview and let her grab the details.
Sure.
We both were living on opposite sides of the country, and within a short time frame, we both moved to Nashville. Respectively, like there were situations and things in our lives that God was calling us into and out of, that, or I could say the other way around, he was calling us out of some things and into others. And had both of us move to Nashville within about 2 to 3 weeks of each other. We didn't know each other prior, and it took a hot second for us to meet. But with that lead up,
I think, to boil it all down, because this is like a long story.
I know we had spent a couple hours going through it at one point
to tell it well.
So many beautiful details of just how God cares about every single thing. To sum it all up, God was calling us. We both listened. And in listening, he placed us in the same communities, in similar environments. And the bottom line is we both were ready to listen to God and put him first. We went to we ended up going to the same church. We were in the same small groups, completely unrelated to this church. Had the same group of friends, both worked at a random coffee shop on a daily basis, and somehow never saw each other for 9 months because we weren't ready for each other. And when we finally were, the bottom line genuinely is we finally met. We met through the internet. Yay!
Go 21st century technology.
Yes.
for real.
Yes.
So funny, you guys were literally in each other's circles and then met through the internet.
Genuinely, I don't think it could have happened any other way, because we should have met 25 different times, if not more, up to that point.
Sometimes it takes a DM to change your life.
Yeah. And not knowing that we had the same circles, genuinely not even knowing the other person existed, or that our personal mentors and people knew the other person. But long story short, we finally met, and genuinely, I think I can speak for both of us that it was the first time both of us just like kind of put our hands out, like with acceptance of, God, you come first. And if you have something here, awesome. But regardless, I'm going to keep following you. And it was this beautiful moment of both of us in tandem choosing that, and choosing that regardless of what happens, God is first. And so it just was this beautiful foundation of us seeking God above each other. And in that, he just started opening up so much beautiful, beautiful testimony and healing and just worship and so much in our lives together. So
I think respectively, like our stories, even though we come from different backgrounds, a lot of the things that we have walked balance each other really well. And that has led for kind of this almost open door policy of whatever either of us is walking through, we've been able to help the other person navigate through really hard times. Really deep heart struggles. Like there hasn't been a fear or intimidation of bringing something up that like today I'm just, this thought from when I was in 7th grade popped up and I just don't know how to process it. And like for both of us respectively, we've been able to heal. There's been challenges in our faith. There have been seasons where each of us since being married have been like, I don't know if this God thing is really right now. And the other person has been able to say, hang on a second, what about all these things? What about all of these occurrences? What about when we walked through this together? And it's without having her in my life, like I know for a fact that God would not be operating in my life and I wouldn't be seeking God the way I do currently had I not met and married her. And to give some perspective, and I think as to one of the reasons why you brought this up, like we met and basically like 30 days later we got married because we felt like God opened the door and specifically said like, hey, this is this person, because each of us were so like focused on our relationship with God and not finding our identity in the other person, because we had our hearts set on the right things. The relationship was already on a path to being like a healthy, balanced,
Yeah.
like,
It was like we were already spiritually married with God. It was the most profound thing. And what's funny is we were not trying to get married.
when we met, it wasn't like, okay, cool, so
Like,
you're this person that was delivered to me on a silver platter. Like,
to put it in perspective, like both of us are fairly romantic people, and in past seasons have definitely struggled with, you know, oh, I found this person, I'm infatuated with them, like, what's our future? And starts, you know, thinking and imagining and dreaming. And what's crazy is, as much as that has been both of our hearts, we met each other for the sake of honesty and vulnerability. We weren't really obsessed with each other. Like, we met and we were like, you're cool, not crazy attracted to each other, genuinely. Like, it took us time. And it was like, we did not have this plan of, hey, this person's awesome, like, I'm so in love with them, they're so hot, this is the best thing ever, we're gonna get married in this many months or this many years.
Right.
It genuinely was just us having encounter after encounter after encounter with God, and God going, I bless this. And he called us into marriage, and genuinely we were like, oh, okay, so we'll start planning a wedding. And 3 times he had to interrupt us planning to say, no, I said get married. And we're like, oh, okay, so we'll do it this way.
so a different type of wedding.
Yeah.
So we should elope, right?
Yeah. And then he's like, no, I said be married. So and it took us a minute to really understand that God was genuinely calling us into this, because we weren't trying to rush anything. We weren't trying to just bulldoze ahead. And I just have to say, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with a long engagement. There's nothing wrong with long, you know, dating. And there's times where, you know what, God is calling you to something, but you absolutely know when he does. And he equips you for it completely. Because it's not, no matter what path it is, like, marriage is not an easy thing.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I think I'd even go as far to say, like, we definitely had, like, questions and fears of, like, if we jump into this right now, like, is this God calling us into marriage? Are we just 2 stupid kids? Like, well, I don't know.
There are questions, for sure.
Like, there was a lot of fear just trying to walk in what we felt like God was saying. And it was this consistent, like, let's pray about this. Let's take some time, and before we do anything irrational, like, let's invest into this. And that consistently, that heart posture, that mindset of, we felt like God was calling us into something. So then going to God with it and saying, was this you? Are you sure? Before we went ahead with anything, always led to a lot richer experience of actually walking it out in, like, full faith and knowledge, not questioning the process. Like,
even though when he said yes, we still were like blinded every time.
With what you guys just said, you guys were able to go through this process because you were letting go and really trusting God, and that's like a staple in y'all's life. And with that doesn't just affect, like, your personal life. It doesn't just affect what you do on the day to day. Your faith, it affects everything. And I kind of want to transition this conversation now into Harpswell. So you guys are building this business. You guys have explained it to me. I love it. And I think it's really unique and interesting. And there's a huge spiritual connection and following the spirit aspect to it as well. And so can you guys explain kind of what this business is, and then how the spirit connection leads into it?
She's looking at me, so I'll take this one.
Right. You put it on her for the last one. So
you got this one, babe.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to sum it up is each of us respectively have a lot of experience with helping people do something. Whether it's helping someone like bring a dream to life with some photos, whether it's helping a business kind of reevaluate their standing and what they stand for. Respectively, each of us have helped people around us a lot. And we wanted to find a way to do that, not necessarily as a nonprofit, but how can we help individuals, businesses, corporations look at the bigger picture, look at what is in front of them, what they currently have built their businesses or their or are building on, question it for the better, find the resources that are in front of them, find the heart behind what they do, and then move forward knowing full and well like why we stand for what we stand for and how to help other people understand that. To like, I feel like that's the heart behind what we do. What it actually looks like is sitting down with people and discussing. So you're building a business. What font do you use to help someone understand like who you are and your personality? What images do you select? How do you like have a website that interprets to your clients, what you stand for? And we've tried to figure out a way that kind of the like big word is, it's like agency or a creative studio, something like that helps businesses, but we're not so unapproachable. We're not so corporate that people feel like they have a problem, or they've been told, oh, I need a new logo, but I don't really know why, or I don't know how to navigate this next season. I've been doing this business for 15 years and like, I'm happy that I do this business, but I don't understand what I really stand for. And we help people define that. We help people understand the path forward. The name Harpswell Studio comes from a place, an island off the coast of Maine, that when you're standing on the rocks, you overlook a handful of other islands, and you see the waves that are coming in, and you see the storm as it comes in. And it's almost this looking point where you get an understanding of what's in front of you. And the very rocks that you stand on are cut by the waves that have come before you. And so the name comes from this kind of overlook, this place of seeing what has come and how to move forward, and anticipating like great things are on the horizon. You can see it. So that's like the easiest way that I could kind of break it down.
Right. And so, go ahead.
I think to piggyback on that a little bit, to describe a bit of our role in businesses is, if I could put one word on it, is advocacy. A lot of the time in the creative industry, businesses will go, I think that I need this. And they'll go find either the type of creative, a graphic designer, a photographer, whatever it may be. And it's a like one singular person. They don't know anything about the other realms, and they present a problem, and the creator goes, okay, here's some options. But so often, especially today, businesses don't actually know what they need. And so they're presenting a problem that is more of a symptom. And so our hearts is genuinely to advocate for businesses and to help them not just like slap a Band-Aid on what they think is wrong, but to actually help them stand on their own 2 feet moving forward.
Yeah.
A huge part of what we have been doing is, we have clients that we've had relationships with for years. And so there's little, it's kind of like a snowball that you had a few flakes, and then as the years go by, you've rolled it along. and you've helped them grow their business from 0 to 1,000, and you've helped them understand who they are, why they do what they do, which is a huge part of the mental game of being a business owner.
And sustainability in that.
Yes. The day in and day out can be so challenging if you don't know your identity. And then at the end of the day, helping them stand on their own 2 feet, that it's okay. You don't need us 24/7. You don't need us on retainer. You don't need us, for the entire life of your business. You're running it, and you're capable of running it because we've allowed you to understand what is needed in your business and how to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah. I feel like it ties back into that earlier in the conversation, that like walking away and trying to see the bigger picture. For us, we are trying to help someone because we're outside of a lot of businesses. Like, we have an understanding of how business works and what makes it thrive, but I'm not running your day to day. And so you can sit down with me over a cup of coffee. We can pull apart the strong suits, the flaws, the bits and pieces, and get that really big overview. We're far enough removed from the day to day that, okay, well, this symptom that you're trying to analyze and you're trying to put a Band-Aid on, like, is caused by this much larger thing that you have completely neglected over the years. And it's just like, it's been a blind spot that you haven't noticed. Not a problem that, like, it's been a blind spot, but let's tackle this so that it's not, blind anymore. Yeah. Let's bring some light to things that wouldn't otherwise see it.
Come on. So one thing that I want to touch on, because I think you guys have a really unique perspective when it comes to this, is a lot of what you had said, Natalie, about advocacy. And when it comes to, because you guys had explained it to me at one point, who you're advocating for. So I know one of you is more, has the focus, like one is more client focused and the other is more like customer focused, if I can use those words. Can you guys kind of explain that? Because I think that's a really unique and interesting take that not a lot of other agencies have. Yeah.
I think it kind of boils down to if a business comes to us and says, hey, I need XYZ. I need a website. I want to use these words on it. Yeah. One of us is really focused on dialing in, like, okay, these words are great. This is what it means to you to say these things. But also the people that you want buying from your business, like, what do they need to hear? What is it that actually is going to support you? Because the support network is, the customer is buying from the business. But if the customer isn't being engaged, if the customer is being neglected because the business wants to communicate in such a certain specific manner, then the customer's going to die off and the business eventually isn't going to thrive. Yeah. So respectively, we've found that, like, I tend to look at things a little bit more from the customer perspective, and Natalie looks at more, the business, advocating the business side, and
which is more what I went on a tangent on of advocating for the business owners so they can stand on their own 2 feet and understand. So that's a little bit more of my specialty is working with the client and helping them just establish confidence in themselves and basically a skeleton of who their company is, so that everything that Zach focuses on and everything that comes from that has something to stand on.
Yeah. If you don't define who you are and why you do it, your customer has no reason to trust that you're an authority on the subject.
Yeah.
It's like going to a coffee shop that says, we like coffee, and having absolutely no clue how to brew coffee. If someone says, hey, I got this, bag of coffee from you. Any thoughts on what I should do? And nope,
Not
you can make some coffee with it. Well, like,
I feel like so many businesses go about it that way.
Yeah. Like,
or even with branding, which is a huge part of what we do.
Yeah.
It's so easy to go, oh, well, this is my business name. Give me something. And, okay, so I can pick some colors. I can pick, a symbol that's super just cliche off of your name. But until we sit down and have a conversation and figure out who is this business? What is it that you actually do? It's not just your catchy name. You can play off of that. That's amazing. But you can't just pick random colors and fonts until you know what those are supposed to say.
There's a tone of voice in communication, tone of voice in like visual communication that being able to, we got a windstorm here. Being able to help a business communicate who they really are visually, that matters. There's a reason that companies like Nike feel strong because of the way that they use like a bold font or just even black and white. Like we're just going to use contrast to spell out who we are and that we're different. Helping a customer, a client define who they are respectively, like that identity. You hear the term branding thrown around like everybody needs branding. Like, what does that mean? What does it actually look like to go from being a business to a brand? Like from our perspective, like there's thousands of businesses out there. Like they all do something, they provide a service, but until I can associate something that, doesn't have 3 paragraphs of text on it with your, if I can look at an image that feels like what you do. Okay, all of a sudden, like that image just triggers, oh my goodness, that's really strong. It's really powerful. It evokes an emotion. Or, wow, that's so soft and subtle. It feels like, and so when you start to transition from needing to explain yourself to just having your identity rooted in something, it goes way back in the conversation of like me feeling like my identity was rooted in my parents. It wasn't until I understood like who I was inherently that I could actually speak from that position.
That's exactly actually what I was going to bring up is as you were explaining it, I was noticing there is this connection back to your spiritual journey, which makes me wonder. So you had said, I think right before we started that, like, and your own lives have proven this, everything you do is like spirit led. Everything you guys do. So how does that impact your business? It appears it has the same process the same process that you've gone through in your spiritual life is very similar to what you guys do in a business perspective. But how has being spirit led impacted the business, like how you guys run it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think there's a small piece that looking for all the small things.
Back to what you said at the beginning. Wow.
Yeah. It adds up to big changes. It adds up to big differences. On a business scale, even us just trying to look at how we can help people. It's not necessarily about how do we go change the world with the biggest, most splashy campaign we can do. How do we help one person take the step forward? What does that look like? And trying to acknowledge in our own ways, like what we can do.
It almost feels kind of like a ministry, honestly, that where most people go into an agency business with the mindset of how do I get the big clients? Our entire mindset on it is how do we honor God through this? And how do we love on every single person that comes our way? Whether that's listening genuinely on a daily basis to God, on when to say no. That's a challenging one for us is when to recognize where we can't be helpful. And how to say yes is a big one. Listening, there have been multiple times where we've had a thought in our head because of what sounds logical, and God just kind of whispers, hey, this is your price for this client. And many times it's lower than what we think, and sometimes it's higher. And we go, we can say that. And just genuinely allowing ourselves to be humbled, and allowing ourselves to more be vessels, genuinely, that we have the heart and the abilities and skills that God has given us, to help anybody and everybody that comes to us, but just being obedient to allowing God to really run the show.
Yeah.
It's hard to put that into words, but
yeah. I've had this kind of consistent little thought of walking on like a faith journey, walking on the like business with God journey is it's like having that relationship, that friendship with someone, but that person knows what's going on the other side. They have the like foresight that you don't. And so trying to navigate like, hey, this new client just approached us and they're looking for XYZ package. Like we can provide whatever service they might need, but is this something that we need to take on today? And do we have, like, I could say, yeah, I can carve out an extra couple hours each day and I can hustle and actually help them. And, it'll be great. And from my perspective, I'm looking at, maybe it's $sign extra in our bank account, or, maybe I can help this person, but bringing that to God and saying, should we take this client on? And then just like listening to whatever that response might look or feel like of, maybe not, because there might be something with a current client that blows up tomorrow, that all of a sudden, like, I didn't have the foresight to know what my clients that do exist that I've already do have booked. I don't know what they're going to need tomorrow, but my faith in God, my trust in God says that if there's something that's going to happen, if I'm in dialogue with God, he knows in advance what I should be on the lookout for.
And that's happened time and time again.
Yeah.
Constantly. So he keeps proving himself there. That's for sure.
It's freaking great. Guys, we are at the top of the hour. So unfortunately, we got to end this here. Thank you guys so much. You are, like I said, the most spirit-led couple I have met, and freaking adorable. But I so appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys a lot for the time and to come out here and share some of your story. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Such a good conversation.